early, so we'll do that. So very good. Well, welcome everybody. I'm glad that you guys could join us today. I'm sure we got a bunch of other people that are coming on board around here in DC. It's some pretty nasty weather out there, and I'm actually working virtually myself here from my house. So hopefully, as long as the tree branches stay on the trees, we'll be okay. So welcome. I am Dave Lowe. I'm the Director of Government Solutions with Dynamic Computer Corporation, and with us today we have Bernie Meyer. Say hey, Bernie.
Hello, everybody.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you being here, Bernie, and we'll get into exactly what's happening there. The objective of this webinar here and this series, actually, it's kind of a sparse series that we're doing, but it's really to assist everybody, including procurement, in understanding the virtual and cloud environment that's out there. And this is an interagency kind of a briefing, so we pull folks in from multiple places and we try to include as many people as we can from the different sources because of what you guys know and what you guys are up against. We're going to dialogue on some of the best practices and the initiatives that are out there, what's happening out there, give you some of the pros and cons, to keep you out of hot water, in fact, is one of the objectives here. We'll talk about Dynamics federal vehicles and the options that you can use to purchase from us if you'd like to. We'll also provide you with link to resources, and we have some special links today that we will be getting to. A little bit about us. We were founded in 1979, and we have a lot of experience in the healthcare space, so we're kind of growing in different areas in the federal space as well in the healthcare space. Most of you who know me know Dynamic Computer Corporation. We started out in equipment, and we still do supply a lot of equipment, whether it's COTS, commercial off-the-shelf kind of software, and your commoditized IT products. We still do that, and a lot of folks are buying from us and that are here. So we are vendor agnostic. One of the biggest things about us is that we're not really about what our vendors are trying to do, and I love Bernie, and we'll talk about Bernie in a minute, but we really want to know what it is that's best for you and make sure that we're applying those things appropriately. We are the go-to resources for the oddball and weirdware kind of things. If you have anything out there that's weird or odd, let us know, because chances are we can help you out with that. And we are virtualization experts, and we're continually helping to move into that virtualization space. And we do have a 98% repeat business, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of you folks are here, because you're doing business with us, and we certainly appreciate that. And with us, we're going to be talking about Brocade. And Brocade was founded in 1995, and most folks know about these guys by now because they're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. And what they focus on is the virtual environment, and some of the pieces of the virtual environment, helping make it simple for everybody to utilize, and in that consolidation and the convergence of the networks, and what you all are doing in the IT space. Specialized in virtualization and cloud. I love this term, future-proofed. It's a great way to describe what's happening and what the virtual environment kind of enables us to do, to optimize applications and protect your investment. And that's why I invited Bernie here today for this webinar. And really, some housekeeping things. Geez Louise, if I could just talk. For the webinar setup, if you go to the right panel, you can put your audio pin in. You can also chat, and we're going to be chatting along with this. We'd love to include you as part of this process and the dialogue. So in order to do that, you have to enter your audio pin so that we can unmute you. And just real quick, what you asked for, and I'd love to hear in the chat side, just in that vein, chat me something as to, this would be the best briefing if, I didn't get this in the survey soon enough, I don't think, but if it was brief, was the first one, not too technical, and we'll do our best to stay above that technical line so everybody doesn't fall off their chairs. And the information relates to real-world examples, and in fact, we've done that with this presentation to help kind of tie what's happening out in the cloud environment and the virtual environment into real-world examples. they need help with, you folks need help with locating costs for services. Certainly we can help with that. Meeting initiatives, huge right now. And then Kirk, I always love Kirk. He's beyond help. He's with the Army Corps of Engineers. So we appreciate you being with us, Kirk, as well. So if you have anything that you would like to that, let's see. Certainly if it was brief. Yes, Karen, if it was brief, yes, we will keep it brief. We'll do our best to do that and keep it non-technical as well. So moving on with that, if there's anything you'd like to apply to that, if this was the best briefing for you, type it in that chat area or your questions. We'll be glad to include you in that process as well. Cloud First initiative. Most folks know about this by now, but maybe not. It extends from Executive Order 13514, and it kind of paints the picture for what's happening out in the federal space for the cloud and virtualization, kind of paints that vision. And it's driven primarily now through FedRAMP. If you're not familiar with that, that's a GSA program that kind of gives the infrastructure, the groundwork for what is necessary to fly a cloud in the federal space. It also applies to mobile devices and bring your own device, BYOD. Cloud terms you're hearing, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, software as a service. All of these things revolve around the cloud terms and kind of putting things out in the virtual environment. It also revolves around shared resources so that you can maximize what's happening, what you have as far as your infrastructure. It all results in cost savings. A lot of these can be applied to green initiatives with LEED certification, and really make sure that if you're doing some of this, that you're getting that double hit for your initiatives in the green side, because just about everything you do in the IT environment, especially when it revolves around virtualization and cloud, can be applied to meeting your green initiatives. Little tidbit there for you. A lot of things around big data in March 2012, cybersecurity last year, and then open data, things that giving us access to more and more information. And that's really what's driving this whole thing, is that we have so much information to be able to process that we simply can't do it the same way that we were doing it before. And that's why we're heading this way. FDCCI is the Federal Data Center Consolidation Initiative, and it's kind of pushing virtualization to distributed systems around. It's to adopt that cloud-based infrastructure so that you can vary your demand. And what that means is if you have something, if you think about the census, for instance, where all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of people that have to do a whole bunch of things, but that only happens once every 10 years. Well, you don't want to build a complete infrastructure to handle that kind of load. You can kind of burst into that. You can expand into it. It's flexible enough to be able to do that. And that's a great example of how we can drive these virtual environments to meet demand and then scale them back when we're done. And it improves the efficiencies of the remaining data centers. So some of the things you'll find you can't be virtualized, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And in fact, you can say, okay, well, some of this stuff can't be, but the rest of this can. So what's left, the infrastructure that's left, is very, very efficient, and you have the ability to utilize that, and reducing the duplication of efforts around either within your agency or even in between agencies. Some of these environments are completely shared, so it's another place where we can look for some real progress in being able to move forward in a virtual environment. Some of the goals, and these are very aggressive goals that the Office of Personnel and Management released. They want to reduce the total data center floor space by 40%. So they want to decrease the amount of data center operable space. And the power usage goes back to your green initiatives, right? So looking at improved power usage and the energy on IT by 60%. Crazy numbers, right? So, and then decrease the number of physical servers by 80%. So we're looking at ways to be able to consolidate, compress, whatever words you want to use, to pull all these pieces together so that we can do it in a smaller footprint and yet do it faster, do it better, do it easier than we were doing it before. So that's the kind of thing that we're seeing. So what is virtualization? And we'll talk about that and the benefits of those, and we'll give you some industry examples here so that you kind of understand what it is in case you're not familiar with it. Now, virtualization is where you have a device, and now we see this mobile device revolution that we've had, where it looks as if you're operating on a local machine. It looks and smells, acts like it. So you're accessing the same information, and each virtual device can be self-contained. So even if you're right next to somebody else, you can't see their data, they can't see your data. And they appear as real devices. So the same things that you would expect to see if you turn your computer on is what you're going to see when you start utilizing this. And some of these types, you'll see hardware, we see some of that, desktop, software, memory, all these can be virtualized, which is totally cool these days, data, network, and storage. So today we're really going to be concentrating on two of these areas, hardware and network, because within this we're trying to make it at least palatable so that you don't walk away with a headache, and we'll try to keep it as high level as we can. So here's an example of virtualization. Well, up until recently, we're kind of bound by the process capability of what's on our desktop or what we're carrying around in our laptop, right? Well, this is not dependent upon your desktop or any desktop environment at all. In fact, you can continue to utilize the same things, the same operations, all your software, any of your databases that you access. Many of us access these things virtually already, and we might not even know it. It just looks so much like what's happening on our desktop, we might not know it. So we can continue to operate the regular software, Office programs, Word and Excel, and the things that we use every day, and it's not dependent upon the process capability of our computers here. It also enables us to do what we're doing today. I'm actually sitting at my home office because the weather here is absolutely ridiculous, and I'm looking out my window at trees, branches that are falling off because of the ice. But it enables me, as long as I have connectivity, and hopefully the branches don't fall on a power line, as long as I have connectivity, I have the ability to log in and utilize this type of the space virtually, and I can do this the same way in a virtual environment to gain access to the same files, the same folders, the same storage that I have. And it looks and acts like your PC. It's safe and secure. Nobody else can see what you're doing, and it's flexible and powerful. And so your upgrades and updates happen someplace else. It's a beautiful thing because you and I don't have to worry about that anymore. Somebody else is responsible for making that work. If it's slowing down and bogging down, somebody else in the IT space in managing your networks is going to be responsible for that. And so that's what makes these things work so nicely. And some of the benefits here is it does reduce your physical footprint. It doesn't require a bunch of horsepower here on your desk or at a closet in your office or multiple closets or a total floor within your office space to be able to handle the data. It can be off-site, and you can consolidate these physical devices sometimes in one unit, hundreds within one particular unit. So, and that also consolidates your resources, so all your IT resources that you're utilizing can be remotely done and done by a single person potentially or a few people as opposed to a team of people now. It can be centrally managed and in fact can be managed from multiple places, and oversight can be given to be able to see into these machines. It does save power and money, and it works with any approved device. And this is becoming more and more important as we start to look at your bring your own device, your tablets and your smartphones, and having access that way, and still being secure and being able to provide that information to you in a quick and effective way. Some of the ways that we see this happening today, most of us, I can't imagine us not knowing about Amazon.com, especially after Christmas, the Christmas season, and all the purchases that we're having during that holiday season, and most of us utilized Amazon.com. Some of us actually sell on Amazon.com. And if you sell on Amazon.com, it's a perfect image of a virtual environment. There's no storefront. It's not like anybody has to come to a physical place. You have your stuff out there. It's there. Boom. You can point, click. Somebody can buy, somebody can sell, and you never necessarily even have to see each other personally. It just happens in a virtual environment. Online banking, another place where we do things every day where we have access to our account. We can see it. We can see the money. We can transfer money. We can have the ability to do just about everything that we can do. In fact, sometimes even more than we can do is if we walked in. iTunes for virtual music and Netflix. You don't even have to go. Remember the days of going to Blockbuster, and now Blockbuster's out of business. And we just cleared out today. We were this morning. We were going through all of our old VHS movies. We don't have to go to the store anymore. We can point, click, and virtually be fed a movie and have it streamed to us. So these are ways that you can take a look. All you need is your connectivity. You don't have to update anything, and any supported device with appropriate credentials can have access to it. So just like kind of this meeting, if you have the appropriate credentials to get into this meeting, you're here. And this is a virtual place. We're virtually meeting too. And here's a question that I have for everybody. I'm going to launch a poll real quick. Let's see here if I can do this. So here's the poll. I expect a requirement for virtualization or cloud computing either right now, sometime in the near future, or you're not really sure. So if you can go ahead and fill that out for me, we'll be able to take a look and see where we are in the planning process. And if we have any questions about that, we'll be able to talk a little bit more. And I'll leave that open for a few more minutes, and we'll talk about that. And while we're talking about that, I'll talk about when I got together with Steve Van Rokel. He's the Chief Information Officer for the United States. And some of this, maybe some of the reasons why we're talking about this today is there's an incentive. I'm not sure if you know this, but there's an incentive for moving into this technology. And it looks like, do we have everybody? I'll leave it over for another couple seconds, and then we'll shut that thing down for you. All right. Well, we got some of the folks here, and we'll see. Let me see if I can see what you're seeing. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I don't know how to see that. All right. Well, we got the results in. Oh, hold on a second. And it looks like 22% are doing it right now, and then it's across the board, 11%, 11%, 11% are doing it Q3, Q4, Q1 of 2015, and 44% are not sure. So some of these you may be very interested in this and what we're having to say, and then others we'll talk about in a more broad term. So good to know. Let me see. I'll share that with everybody so you can see those poll results. All right, so there you go. So when I got together with Steve, we were talking about incenting the transition, and he was talking about 10% cuts in IT budgets. Now, this happened in 2013, but we're seeing similar things that are happening here. And I do believe that this is still in effect, where 5% is reinstituted for new technology. And the objective is to drive folks to the cloud, to virtual environments, bring your own device, BYOD, and cybersecurity and big data. This is what everything is wrapped around. I'm not going to get too much into big data because that's kind of off topic for today, but there is money that's being allocated just for the R&D for big data in 6 different departments. So very cool things happening there. So the key players in the data center consolidation, the drive is to do, for every agency, to do more with less, to adopt new methods, and look for revolutionary versus evolutionary change. And I'm going to talk about that specifically for just a minute, and that is, what do we mean by evolutionary change? Well, evolutionary change takes place incrementally. Sometimes it's like baby steps, right? We're kind of moving in a direction. We've seen a lot of that with moving from like a single server, right? A single server to multiple servers within a box like this. It's called blade technology. We see a lot of that in IT nowadays. And that's kind of evolving to say, okay, it's still a big box, but we're fitting more into that big box, right? But revolutionary change comes from something like Moonshot from HP, where you're cramming a whole lot more into that, and the functionality and the flexibility is light years ahead of some of the old technology, and it makes everything faster, makes everything easier. You can consolidate multiple racks. I'm talking about like a whole data center kind of full of racks into a single or two racks full of moonshot servers. So the other place that we're seeing this is we're seeing this in evolutionary versus revolutionary change in what we call a virtual fabric. And with that, I am going to unmute our illustrious and industrious Bernie Meyer. Bernie, you still with us?
Yes, I am, Dave. Thank you.
Okay, super. So Bernie, I want everybody to meet Bernie. Bernie is, again, with Brocade Advanced Data Center and Architecture's Virtualization Group. That's a big mouthful. You know he works with the government with that kind of a title. And we also want to talk about a little bit about the simplicity, how this is converging in the virtualization and cloud environment. And I want to peg you for some of that future-proofed words in a few minutes. And I'm going to pull up. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Bernie, and let everybody know what you do and what your space is, and I'll get your presentation up and running.
All right, great. Thank you, David. I'm business development across the federal government for Brocade. We focus on data center architectures and network virtualization, which is a new and emerging area. You may have heard the term software-defined network. That's also evolving and an integral part of network virtualization. But we'll try and talk about that a little bit. So what I wanted to focus on was what we call on-demand network services for data centers or public-private cloud, and specifically something we call Internet Protocol, Ethernet Fabric, and then a little bit about our virtual software router. This is required. Brocade legal requires us to put this disclaimer up. I'm not going to go through that, but basically just forward-looking kinds of information that you might hear here, and it's subject to change. So we talk about on-demand data center networking. Basically, it's about empowering your data center infrastructure capabilities. In today's world, we interconnect within and between data centers. So when David talked about consolidation and becoming more efficient, every data center manager has a disaster recovery plan or has a continuity of operations plan where if something happens at a data center, they need to be able to replicate that capability as quickly as possible in another data center. So that brings in this connectivity between data centers. And so it's about keeping this process automated, efficient, and agile. So what I wanted to focus, Brocade has multiple product lines, fiber channel fabrics, which I'll talk about a little bit, core IP routing, and then this whole area called software-defined networking, which is very much an emerging area. But what I wanted to focus on today was what we're doing in which I think is revolutionary in the way of Ethernet fabrics. So to provide some background and historical expertise, it's important that you understand fiber channel and where that sits. So in a data center, on the back end side where storage is involved, you have fiber channel storage area networks. Brocade pioneered that space, and we maintain 90% of Global 1000 data centers, many federal customers, with a 75% market share in what's known as SAN fabric, or storage area networks. And it's instrumental for large data center operations to maintain access and reliability to that data that's stored in that data center. So the knowledge we gain from building sand fabrics, we're carrying over that same knowledge over to the Ethernet fabric space. And the Ethernet fabric space is where the users come in and gain IP Internet Protocol connectivity to the data center. So it's on the front side of the data center, whereas the storage area network's on the back side of the network. So that's where we see the opportunity for innovation. And this graph basically shows you our projection of where we're going in the future with Ethernet fabrics. So Ethernet fabrics are about aligning, about these 4 areas which align very appropriately with many federal government IT initiatives. Reduce costs and consolidation, eliminate complexity, increase IT staff productivity, do things quicker, and transform the organization. Is going to be transforming, every IT organization transforming to a service orientation. So what is an Ethernet, what is an Ethernet fabric? Basically, it's best shown through a diagram. What we have today on the left is what you would find in your typical data center. You have core network routers, core routers at the top. You have an aggregation layer, and then you have a distribution layer, and then you have your server infrastructure. So where the opportunity comes to provide innovation is to collapse the distribution and the aggregation layer with a fabric. And basically you can see what the differences are. The other thing that's happening in the data center is becoming totally virtualized. So you have a lot of servers, but they're all virtualized servers. So once you do that, the traffic characteristics of the IP traffic that comes through the data center changes, because many of these servers talk to each other now, because they're running applications that are integrated and require the ability to talk to each other. So now we're having what we call east-west traffic, which is traffic that goes from server to server rather than from server to user, user to server, client server. The client server approach is being diminished, and you have much more activity going server to server. So that says we have an opportunity to generate an evolutionary way to accommodate and optimize what we see happening in the data centers. So this is about increasing staff productivity, because that leftmost architecture requires a lot of manual administration. And what we're doing today with the fabric is it's self-adopting, self-healing, self-configuring. So that's where a huge IT productivity comes about. So some of the top bullets of what a fabric is: it's an architecture. It's not simply a box. It's mesh. Every unit in that mesh is equal. Complete democracy, designed for today's data center, i.e. optimizing east-west traffic. The other thing is it's VM aware. And when I say VM aware, it knows where all the virtual machine images are, and it knows where all the appropriate connectivity points are, and it keeps track of that so that you can do VM moves. And a VM move can be from a data center to another data center, or it can be within that data center. Active. So we have something in that legacy architecture called spanning tree protocol. It requires a lot of administration. It provides limitation because you can't use all of the links that are available to you. Some have to be on standby. And the other thing is there's a lot of proprietary aspects to that legacy architecture. And when you're looking for a fabric solution, be careful, because not all of them are standards-based. So as as you can imagine, as you add bring your own device, more power at the edge with smart devices, tablets, we have a huge explosion in data. So you need the ability to scale horizontally as that demand grows. And that's the other aspect of Ethernet fabrics that's important. Automated design, highly scalable. Okay. So go ahead and fill that out, Dave. A lot of this is very technical, but we'll stick over on the benefits side. You get near perfect load balancing across all links in a trunk group. All links utilized with flow-based load balancing. So what that means is in that older architecture, you could not specifically at all times determine what the latency was or what the response time was going to be through that network. What you can do with the fabrics is it's deterministic latency because the paths are predefined and they move and load balance, and you're always at most going to have a certain number of hops, and you can determine and maintain that response time. And then there's the improved scalability and resilience. There's no single point of failure. So if one of those switches in the fabric breaks, it's self-adopting and self-healing, and it accommodates for that, and you don't lose your network. The other aspect of this is the manual aspect, the manual IT staff manual administrative aspect. There is no administration. When you want to scale up your network, you bring in another switch, and the switch adopts, configures automatically. There's no manual requirement involved. Go ahead. All links are fully active, so relative to that legacy architecture that you're using today in your data center, some links are not active because they have to be on standby because of the nature of the protocols that are involved. In a fabric, all ports are active, all links are active. You're using the full benefit of your investment. And then, okay. So we've been doing this for quite some time. We've adopted the technology from the SAN fabric experience. We brought it over to the IP side. So basically, we're changing the kinds of content. IP traffic is different than disk storage traffic. So we change the kinds of content that we have to work with. But in actuality, the underlying mechanisms in the switch, in the fabric, are technologies that we know very well. So we're applying it there, and as this shows, there has been just a general increase in the number of customers in the data center that are going to fabric, and we see that as a very growing trend. As it relates to cloud usage, large data center consolidations where the demands grow rapidly, exponentially, the fabric is the better solution for being able to scale that up and not have to do manual administration to accomplish that goal. And this is... you
kind of went into this before, didn't you, Bernie?
Yeah, I did, and it just kind of shows our Brocade's leadership position in the marketplace relative to our competitors.
Good stuff.
So we scale and we accommodate that environment much better than our competition. So some things that you should be aware of. Obviously, there are other competitors that provide fabrics, but the things that are unique to Brocade, we're industry standards based. We coexist with installed legacy data center networks. In other words, you take that legacy and you can introduce fabrics without having to rip and replace. We'll provide you a transition, a migration plan that's according to your budget, your priority, and makes that whole operation seamless. And Brocade leadership, you know, you can be confident that we understand what we're doing. We have a lot of experience in this area. We developed that experience with our sand fabric expertise, where we have market share leadership, and we have a vision, collaborated with other customers who run very large data centers, who worked with us to provide an Ethernet fabric solution that meets their needs. And the other thing about future-proofing, with the SDN emerging as dominant as it is, and the benefits that it expresses that are achievable, these products are SDN ready. So there are some unique protocols to the SDN area. The Ethernet fabric is already prepared to take advantage of those new protocols.
And that's really important.
I cannot say,
these new, real quick, Bernie, that's really important because as these new technologies become available, we're setting up, they're setting up the protocols so that everybody can expand rapidly into this space, and we're seeing an adoption of this very, 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 very fast, right?
Yeah, and if I might say, if one is familiar with virtualization in general, we virtualized servers, and that exploded on the scene with VMware, KVM, Citrix, etc. And you won't go into a data center today that's not virtualized. I mean, that's just that's pretty much a fact. If you go to the telcos, you go to the ISPs, the Amazons, the Googles, the Yahoos, they all run virtualized data centers. But the thing that's yet, and where we're going in Brocade, having been a proprietary hardware networking vendor, you know, we face the same challenge. But the thing is about Brocade is we've made the commitment as a corporation that we're going to be a leader in the software networking virtualization space. And to reinforce that, Brocade went out and acquired a company called BYOD, which is a software router. And that software router product enjoys over 1 million downloads. It's operated by some of the best-known telcos, ISPs in the country. We see federal systems integrators using it in programs, and the reason is size, weight, and power, and the ability that it provides in the way of agility. It's much easier to download software than it is to go out and buy a new router, a new switch, and bring in a piece of hardware.
And I want to accentuate that as well, and that is, think about what we used to do with Blockbuster. We used to go to Blockbuster and go get a video. Now we don't have to do that anymore. We can just go download it, and it's instantaneous, virtually instantaneous. Obviously, there's some configuration components from your IT side that have to be included, but a lot of those are being automated, as you said. So that's why we're looking at a revolutionary as opposed to an evolutionary type of a progress, right?
We have a national lab customer that's doing massive scale network topology deployment on the fly, and they lay it over top of a physical data center infrastructure. But they can define and set up networks that are overlay fabrics over top this hardware infrastructure that accommodates special needs of different customers, and they can do it on the fly. They can stand it up, they can tear it down, they can reiterate, they can change the topology. It's quite amazing. It's really, and I've been in the IT space 25 years. I can say I've never seen anything like this before. It's just incredible.
Very, very cool. It's very cool.
It is. It's
and all
incredible.
those, and I really appreciate that, Bernie. Good insight. Good stuff as a review of what we have out there now, and where we're headed. I really appreciate all that information, and we'll probably, I'm going to put you on mute for a second because it's feeding back a little bit, and we'll go through some of the pros and cons, and if you want to add anything, you can. We can certainly go into that. Just some of the pros that you'll find from consolidation, the virtual environment. Agile, flexible, scalable. Bernie was just talking about that. The scalability here is just out of sight. The ability to be able to ramp up, and then once you're done, to be able to pull that back down, so you don't just dump a bunch of money into something that then is not running anything on it. Centralized control, give you the visibility, meet your initiatives. This is probably the most important thing for everybody on this call, is meeting the initiatives for cloud computing, data center consolidation, and also your green and environmental components that applies to that, and reducing costs. Everybody's got that pressure, the budget pressure, to be able to handle, and your requirements and what you have to perform, they haven't changed. In fact, your requirements of what your agency and what your team is up against is still on the rise. So you have to do more with less, and that's why when Steve Van Rokel and I were talking about it, it was absolutely imperative to be able to drive away from the older, more expensive technology, and sometimes the technology that was just holding folks back, and they would continue to try to patchwork those things. And that's the thing. Some of the cons, some of the applications that you have cannot be virtualized. Now, we'd have to take a look at the individual applications to see how they're working and how they're accessed, but some cannot be virtualized. There's no way they can do it. There is a dependence on your connectivity. You must have connectivity, which is why I'm glad that we didn't lose power or have any trees go down on the phone lines here, because we wouldn't be able to perform this meeting. Same kind of thing. There are interoperability challenges between vendors, and that's one of the reasons why we get involved. Dynamic Computer Corporation gets involved in this, because DCC can kind of run herd over the finger pointing. Not that there's any finger pointing within Brocade and others, but we know that there are interoperability challenges to be able to make these things work. And private versus public, we kind of tipped into that very lightly, may affect your features and options. And you don't have physical access to the device. So some folks, control freaks in particular, and some IT people, God bless them, they're still control freaks, and they want to see it and they want to be able to touch it. And so there's some getting used to in those environments. How to keep you out of hot water, and not a lot of this is kind of geared towards procurement. So here's how you can keep yourself and your agency and your team out of hot water. First, take your time. Figure out what makes the most sense. Don't be pressed either by budgetary concerns or whatever it happens to be to get into that. Don't rush into it. Engage your IT security early. A lot of this stuff that we're talking about here requires connectivity, access rights, all those components, and the rush to take applications to the cloud can put holes in your security platform. One of the foundational components, as you probably know, are the FedRAMP guidelines, and we're going to provide you with those as well. Apply your highest available standards, and that's not just FedRAMP, remember. FedRAMP is kind of the baseline. Make sure that you guys are applying the best standards. Stay away if you can, or just be careful about proprietary technology. Open is better, and I know Bernie would agree with me there. Verify your vendor claims. Get your service level agreements with teeth so that if something goes wrong, the vendor's on the hook. Look for the lowest total cost of ownership in that, and ultimately protect your data. Protect your data, and you will be protecting your agency, and that will keep you out of hot water. There's nothing that gets folks into hot water more than data that gets out there that's not supposed to be out there. Get a lot of exposure, the wrong kind. So just to recap, the virtualization goals: standardize, simplify. It reduces your capital and operational expenses. Automate those pieces. Bernie talked about that too. Managing the ability to expand, and that scalability is really, really important. Ultimately, everything that we've talked about here helps you meet those agency initiatives. If you're buying from us, there's a couple of different ways that you can do that, and we got a couple of more contracts coming along. But right now we have our GSA Schedule 70 as well as C4D. If you're from the Navy, there's our information. We are a small disadvantaged business if you'd like to use us for any of those type purchases. A little bit about, just to remember, about dynamic. And I know everybody talks about quality. You know, McDonald's has quality, so does Ruth Chris. They all say it. But the biggest difference with dynamic is that we are vendor agnostic. And all the rest of these things, just to simplify it, makes it easy for you to save money, easy for you to be able to meet those initiatives and keep your network running. So about that. So one of the reasons why I like to point this out is we are ISO certified. If you're not familiar with what that is, ISO certification is a pretty complicated and pretty lengthy process to go through. We always recommend that you look at ISO certified companies because they're safe. We have the ability to be able to prove that we can do this repeatedly, and we have processes in place, makes it safe for you to be able to utilize us. Any questions? I know we're running a little bit long, and I apologize for that. Let's see. Let me open it up for questions here real quick, and I will get to questions. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand. Yes. Hang on one sec. Eric, are you there?
Yes. Can you all hear me?
Yes, Eric. Who
Okay.
are you with? And just give.
Yeah, I'm with USDA in Beltsville, Maryland. And I'll make this quick. It's kind of 3-in-1 question, very short questions. Just for a moment, can you kind of I got an idea of when you say virtualization, I mean like virtual servers. Can you kind of expound on that just a little? And then my second question is cloud computing. And then third, I wanted to know if you're going to provide a copy of the handout. That's it.
You betcha. And in fact, stay there because I want to make sure we answer those questions. Bernie, I'm going to unmute you in just a second. So yes, the last question first. Yes, we're going to supply the presentation, PowerPoint presentation, as well as a link to this fantastically run video that you'll be able to do on YouTube. Just a little plug there.
Great.
So you'll have access to that. Just real brief, virtual servers. What would you like to know about virtual servers?
Okay, sure. I get, like you said before, I like to, try to keep things simple in my mind so I can have a better understanding. But I understand, like, in the past, if you wanted to connect to a server, of course, you go through some, web browser thing and, voila, you're connected to some remote server that exists elsewhere. But when you say virtual, I guess what I'm wondering is, does that mean that that the server exists, but it's just not local, it's just further away, or what exactly does that mean? That's what I wanted to know.
I'm gonna open this up to Bernie in a second. I got him unmuted, so you can add into this, Bernie.
Sure.
A virtual server simply is by definition something that's not on site, and that can exist any place outside of your immediate vicinity, and it can also, quite frankly, be on site as well. The objective is depending on where you are and what you have access to. Bernie, you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, Eric, Bernie Meyer here. When we talk about a virtual server, it's versus a physical server.
Mm-hmm.
So when you connect through your web browser, it's transparent. You don't know if you're going to a physical server or a virtual server. But what the trend has been is the data center. Traditionally, we took an application, we put it on a piece of physical hardware. What we're doing today is we take a very similar physical piece of server hardware, and we put a virtualization layer over top of it. And now I run virtual machines, which are representative of that physical machine, but I have multiple virtual machines on that same physical machine. And I take my application and I run it on that virtual machine. I load it up on that virtual machine, and to the application, it appears as if it was a physical machine. The reason we do that
and
is
to you as well.
the physical machine, if you went and looked at its utilization, it might only have been 20% of all of its resources utilized. So we could add 5 applications or 5 virtual machines, and then we would get much more utilization out of that same piece of hardware. Also, if you think about your workday, you're working here on the East Coast, you work 8 to 5 on a piece of physical hardware that's not utilized by the West Coast, but if we bring in the West Coast, we're going to increase utilization. But if we make it available to a much wider audience with a virtual machine technology, we're going to get close to 80% utilization of that piece of hardware. So therefore, we don't need as many physical machines. We get higher utilization. We get we can bring collaborative applications together on that same environment, and as we see today with chat and so forth, those collaborative tools, we can all be working off that same machine, right?
Okay.
So that's really what hardware virtualization is about.
Okay.
What hasn't been accomplished is how do you virtualize that network? Because if you go in the data center, you're going to see a physical piece of hardware, that's the server, but then you're going to see a whole bunch of rows of racks, that is the network infrastructure. Well, the focus is on how to, so we used to have many racks of hardware servers,
Mm-hmm.
and when you virtualize it, you're going to reduce the racks because you're going to get more utilization out of a single server piece of hardware. Likewise, we go look in the data center, we see all these racks of network gear. Well, if we can figure out how to virtualize that, and that's called network function virtualization, we determine what the functions are of all the network appliances that we have, and now we go to the vendor and we say, hey, turn that function into software, and we put it on a commodity Intel platform. Now we can have virtualized network functions, and we can, again, save size, weight, and power, save racks, save utilization of power, et cetera, et cetera. And then you go to the individual vendors who are doing network function virtualization, and you find out how much power does each one of these vendors use. And that's another area where Brocade excels, because we, by almost, compared to our competitors, we save 20% power over top of them right out of the box.
So it was kind of like when you all were going through the slides here, I remember how you showed that one remote server, and it had an equal sign after it, and it was basically saying it was equivalent to a room full of, you know, server equipment.
Yeah,
something,
in
yeah,
fact,
kind of like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to go right here.
Right there. There we go.
Yeah,
That's
and the answer to that is, yeah, because, and the beauty, the real beauty of this is you take all of the resources that you've had, and you're probably have familiar. Have you been in one of these data centers or a place where you have these racks?
I've seen something like that before. Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah.
So, first of all, it's bloody flipping frigid in there because you have to keep things so cold to keep everything working. And then so you have all kind of power that's associated with just keeping the room cold or cool, and the environment is spread out. It's enormous. So when you take this and kind of pile that into that, then think about if you do this virtually, instead of this being at your office complex or someplace near you where you're connected physically to this, this is someplace else, literally somewhere else in the United States, in some instances the world, so you got to be careful. But
so that's the virtual part of it.
That's the virtual part. And the cloud computing also applies to that. And we have did that kind of get you there? And I don't want to.
No, absolutely. And,
cool.
and thank you and Bernie for providing the answer to my question. So I guess my last one was, and the only reason why I'm asking this question because I buy tablets and so forth, and I pretty much live in Best Buy. So, you know, well, I'm starting to hear these little buzzwords, and I'm going, okay. And I'm hearing it today, and I'm going, okay, what does that really mean? So my last thing, and I don't want to shortchange anyone on asking their questions, but, when we talk about cloud computing, I mean, I have an idea in my head, but I don't want to make any assumptions. Are we talking, are we saying things going on behind the scene, because I look at cloud right now as just a place of storing information,
That's
like
one.
Microsoft.
That's one application. Absolutely,
Right.
one application is storing. Another application is actually doing your computing on that. So nowadays, you'll see things. Well, if you have a tablet, right?
Yep, I just
If you're
bought a
using a
Surface.
tablet,
I just bought a Surface
yeah.
Pro 2.
You just bought a Surface. Okay, great. So you have your tablet, and now some of those things are going to run on that machine. Like you may buy a Microsoft Office for that machine, but chances are you're going to be driving your Microsoft Office to Office 365, which is in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like it's happening right there on your box, but it's not. It's actually happening out off. It's actually being all the computation power, all the horsepower that's required to do a calculation in Excel, and the rest of those things. Those things can be offset to a machine.
So that's
I'm
wear
not
and
sure about
tear.
all of them.
So that's less wear and tear on your
Wear and
hardware.
tear. Exactly, and so that's one application. And I do have another question. Hey, Eric, great questions. Great
Thank
questions.
you.
Appreciate your insight there. Hang on. We'll talk a little bit more about those things. Another question that we have is, how do you prevent hacking into the cloud server? Great questions. I can't get into that right now. And I think is it Vivian? Hang on one second. Let me get this open up. I can't see this doggone blessed thing. Yeah, Vivian. Let me. I'm wondering if I can unmute you real quick. I don't think you have your audio pin in, so I can't talk to you. What I can say is that's a great question, and the beauty of cloud computing, one of the components is that your security is centralized and it's not spread out. So there is great risk. There is great risk, and that's why if you look at the FedRAMP guidelines, they have guidelines for being able to set up the components for that, and we'll supply that for you. But that's a loaded question of how you prevent hacking into the cloud server, because quite frankly, that is the primary fear for a lot of folks in going to the cloud, and there are answers to that. And if it's okay, we'll take that one offline since we're already 20 minutes over where we were supposed to be. So, and I apologize for that. I'm going to roll through this real quick, and as we mentioned before, sorry about that. Real quick, free stuff. We have a free white paper from the Gartner Group that we will send you a link to, where you can gain access to it, and that comes. It features Brocade, but Gartner Group, if you're not familiar with them, are a third-party organization, and their job is to shoot holes in your world and make sure that you have the muster to be able to meet the grade, and we'll send you a link to that. The other thing that we have arranged for you so specially today, actually, you can just go to their website and get it, but there's a free trial, 60-day trial of the BYOD 5400V router, and this includes full customer support. So you want to kick the tires, you want to have your IT folks kick the tires, you want to have them say how hard is it to set up, what kind of support structures are in place. This is a great place for you to do that. And in addition to that, we're providing the access for a free initial assessment for your current environment to take a look at your agency goals and make sure that we can help you align what you're trying to do with those agency goals, and so that your folks know about it, so you can get that budget justification. And there is another question about budget justification. So you mentioned OMB's 5% budget realignment. What does that mean? That means that as they're realigning the budgets, there is money here. There is money here to be able to point your agency in the direction and get some of that cash to be able to advance into the virtualized and cloud computing space. Anything that you do there is going to be eligible for this. So real quick, and I know you guys have been so patient, and I apologize because normally these are supposed to be 20 minutes, so I blame Eric for that. No, just kidding. Anyway, if you need to reach out to us, I'm Dave Lowe. I'm with Dynamic Computer Corporation. There's my number, as well as my email address. Bernie, he's there as well. You have access to him. And general contact information for DCC up in Michigan, where they're sending us all this hellacious weather, so we want to kick them for that. Real quick, we'll be sending you links along with the presentation, as I mentioned before, for executive orders and the types of plans and the things to kind of help you understand the pieces that are coming down on your head. And again, our contact information. And besides that, I just really want to thank you all for being with us. Sorry we ran so late. Great information. Thanks, Eric, for the dialogue, and also you, Vivian, for your dialogue, and we do appreciate that, and we will be reaching out to you for a little bit more. If you have any other questions, any other suggestions of how we can help you out, please feel free to reach out to us, and we really appreciate you being here. We'll see you next time, and appreciate you all more than you know, and look forward to working with you folks.